Well, welcome back to our video podcasts that we've been doing for some time and we still don't know what to call it. Shocking. I'm Steve Autrey. I have the privilege of being the pastor at Denver United Methodist Church, and I want to welcome my good friend Paul Thompson of Huntersville United Methodist Church back to the good old United States of America. Paul and a group of folks from Huntersville spent, 10 days in Israel.
Days.
And glad you're back safely. It's good to have you here. It's good to be here as we're at Huntersville United Methodist Church today. So I'd like to know, how did the trip go? And maybe you heard Paul and I talk. We had the chance to go together on a trip about 10 years ago. So second time around for you.
Second time for me.
So what do you have to bring back?
Well, people ask how the trip, and I've come up with two words that I think are very expressive of the trip: exhilarating and exhausting.
Nice alliteration.
Nice alliteration.
I appreciate
How
that.
about that?
Yeah.
So exhilarating from the standpoint of the energy, having people from this church go and watching them. Their perspective on the Bible come alive. They see these places that we got to see in 2014. They see what is going on and they start to begin to make these connections, which is fascinating for people when they go the first time and see things like the Sea of Galilee. They see Caesarea Philippi. They see Nazareth. They see Jerusalem. They see the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. They see the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem. All of these places are so fascinating to watch, to see, and the interactions of the people there.
And I would imagine from when we went for the first time, seeing it for the first time, for you to go a second time and get to see it through someone else's eyes added a different layer of perspective for you.
Yeah, so people often ask, what's the highlight? And I don't know about you and the first time we went, but I remember very much feeling in Bethlehem where Jesus was born. At least that's what tradition says in this particular spot. And I remember standing in that church, this cathedral, this massive building, beautifully ornate, and there's this woman. She was Romanian, and she is just weeping that she is in the same place where Jesus was born, and I was feeling nothing. I was feeling overwhelmed with all of the people, and all I could do was notice the people.
Yeah.
When we finally got down and you can kneel for a moment at the place again that marks where Jesus was born, I wasn't feeling that much.
Yeah, I felt like I was in the middle of a Target during Christmas season when we were there, because of the crush of people and also the elaborate iconography of the place, because this represents so many different Christian traditions and the elaborate decorations around everything, that I grew up in a tradition where we had no symbols.
Right.
We literally had no symbols in the church, not even a cross.
Right.
So the idea, it was overwhelming, and I felt the similar thing, that people were experiencing this in very different ways.
And so then people say, well, where did you feel? And for me, it's on the Sea of Galilee.
Yeah, I can relate.
So we went out on a boat on the Sea of Galilee on a Sunday. And of course, there's a worship service. We have some music and we sing, and somebody does a short presentation. And then we just got to be there on the boat, looking out at the place where Jesus would have been with his disciples, where he likely would have made that little charcoal fire that morning and grilled some fish.
This is from John's Gospel, the resurrection story.
Yeah.
When they go back to the Sea of Galilee, and Peter says, "I'm going fishing," and everybody else says, "I'm going with you." And it's almost a commissioning scene.
It is.
And redemption scene for Peter. It's where he asked Peter, "Do you love me?"
Yeah.
But
just from that boat, I could see that interaction in the places where it was, and I could feel very much more connected to God.
Well, and I think for me, I can relate to the Sea of Galilee having a bigger impact, because it would have looked very similar.
Yes.
The Bethlehem Jesus was born in looks nothing like the Bethlehem of today.
Yeah.
The Jerusalem Jesus knew looks very little like the Jerusalem of Jesus' day, and so forth with all those other towns. by and large. But the Sea of Galilee, those physical borders have remained roughly the same, and it's not developed the way the other parts of the country are. The other thing that got me was just how lush the Galilee was.
The northern part is so, it's green, and agriculture is the predominant industry there.
In my biblical imagination, especially growing up with these stories as a kid, I always thought Jesus was always out in the desert.
Yeah. Well, the Bible talks about a land flowing with milk and honey, and you're like, you get to see all these rocks, and you think, there's no rocks flowing out of it.
There's no milk
or honey.
But when you see Galilee, you can see why people wanted to be there. It is a big oasis in the midst of a relatively arid land. And gosh, Jesus grew up in a pretty awesome place.
Yeah, it truly was. It is picturesque. It is beautiful in so many ways. So many more mountains and hills, and then the valleys and the fertile plains. And so, absolutely, to get a perspective. And then the further south you get, you just got this. You're decreasing in altitude to the point where you get to the Dead Sea, which is the lowest point on Earth.
If you follow the Jordan. But what also happens, though, is you're coming down the Jordan Valley, and you're going down, 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 down. You also get this high ridge line that's going up, to the point where Jerusalem's just super high up, and the Dead Sea's super low. So it's an interesting thing because of what it would take to go up to Jerusalem. So many times you read in the Psalms, "Let us go up to Jerusalem." You literally have to go up to get to Jerusalem.
So the other thing that I wanted to share with the group today is people ask about what other perspectives, and I think when you go, you recognize the tension that exists in this land. Jerusalem by its very name means place of peace. Jerusalem, that's the definition of Jerusalem, place of peace, and yet it is the place where there probably is less peace than any place on the earth, it feels like. There's this constant tension between Palestinians and Jews. Christians even are into that mix. And it all goes back, and I would encourage you to go back and read. After World War II, we all know what happened to the Jewish population in World War II. Approximately 6 million Jews were exterminated during World War II. This Holocaust was something that the world was just astonished and wanted to do something to help the Jewish population. And in 1948, the United Nations develops a plan that allows a Jewish homeland to be reestablished in the land that has been alternately called Palestine, Israel for centuries. Since about the 1000 BC or 1000 AD, the Ottoman Empire had ruled and had a predominantly Arab Palestinian presence in the land. In 1948, the United Nations says that Jews can go back and reclaim land, but when they reclaim the land, they pushed the Palestinians off into places like the Gaza Strip.
They partitioned.
Yeah.
And they partitioned Jerusalem.
Yeah, and they partitioned Jerusalem, the West Bank, Gaza Strip, some of these areas.
Yeah, it's easier for us to think about the tension we used to know, at least some of us used to know before, between East and West Berlin.
Yes.
Except those, if you could imagine two different nationalities who really didn't have a lot of love for each other. So there's always that undercurrent of dis-ease in that land.
And so this tension that exists, it gives you, this trip gives you a little better perspective on that and the complicated layers and layers and layers. As someone who believes this book, I believe God has decreed that land is for the people called Israel. But I also have a hard time believing God would say, yeah, just go ahead and crush your enemies, move them over into these impoverished areas and don't care about them. So there's a lot of tension in this trip that you grapple with.
Yeah, especially as you go into Bethlehem. I imagine, is it still the same way? You go through that huge security gate,
absolutely.
Wall.
Yeah. So we did a sermon, Rod and I did a sermon on the top floor of this hotel we're staying at in Bethlehem. And we're filming the sermon. We get to the very end. I've said the prayer, and the Muslim call to prayer comes on right at the end. That was, you talk about
Yeah.
something that really catches your attention.
Yeah, right, because Bethlehem is a Palestinian territory.
It is in Palestinian authority.
And there's a large wall that goes all the way around, a security wall, perimeter that goes all the way around, guard towers. When you go in, you feel like you're driving into a maximum security prison.
And that whole tension that exists, Palestinians and Israelis, is something that the world, I think, really has to try to understand, because there's not a simple solution to all of this. But I do believe God could have a solution if we were to be open to the ways that God might work in that.
Right. Well, glad that you're back.
Well, thank you. I
Glad you
do
had a
want to
good trip.
say, if you're interested in a trip in the future, I'm going to imagine Steve Autrey would love to hear from Denver folks about getting a trip together. We're always open. If there's enough people, we would love to host another trip in the future. So just let us know if
Right.
you'd be interested, and we'll see what we can do.
Well, certainly, if you can manage it. And again, it's not necessarily a cheap trip,
It's a $5,000 to $6,000 trip.
but it does. Paul and I were talking previously, and I was telling him I think it was some of the most formative education I've had since seminary.
Absolutely.
It certainly helps me read the Bible, especially the New Testament, more faithfully.
So let us know if you'd be interested, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Thank you.